So today, we're diving into a really fascinating historical puzzle. It's a story all about faith, language, and some incredible creativity. I mean, just think about it. Imagine trying to explain your deepest beliefs, but the very words you need, they just don't exist in the language of the people you're talking to.
Okay, picture this. You are a French missionary, and you've just arrived in the kingdom of Siam, way back in the 17th century. Your whole mission is to share your faith, but right away, you hit a massive wall. The most fundamental concept of all, God. How do you even begin to talk about God?
So we're going to follow in their footsteps. We'll start with that very first problem they faced. Then we'll dig into the two really clever strategies they came up with, see how their new language changed, like a lot, over time, and finally, we'll look at the legacy they left behind.
Right off the bat, they hit a huge roadblock. You see, the closest word in Thai for a divine being was Prachao. But here's the problem. That word was already taken. In Siam, Prachao referred to the most respected figures in the entire kingdom, either the Buddha or the king himself. So using it would have been just deeply confusing.
And listen, this wasn't just some casual chat in the marketplace. We're talking about major historical figures like Bishop Louis Lanao, who had to communicate directly with the royal court of the legendary King Narai. Getting the language right wasn't just about being clear. It was about respect. It was high-stakes diplomacy.
So what was their first move? If the everyday word was off the table, they had to, elevate the conversation. The missionaries figured out that if they wanted to be understood and respected, they needed to borrow from the most powerful linguistic toolkits that already existed right there in Siam.
So, here's what they did. They started borrowing from the highest forms of language. They took words from Pali and Sanskrit. These are the classical languages of Buddhist scriptures. And from Ratchasap, which is the special, formal vocabulary used only when speaking to or about the king. The logic here was pretty simple. If this language is good enough for the Buddha and the king, then it's good enough for our God. It was a brilliant way of putting their faith on an equal footing.
But, that only got them so far. What do you do with concepts that were completely new to Siam, things like an angel or the cross? For those, they had to get inventive. And this led them to their second big strategy, looking to a European language for help.
Now, you're probably thinking what I'm thinking. These missionaries were French, right? So why not just borrow from French? It seems like the obvious choice, but the answer tells us something really interesting about how the world worked back then.
Well, the answer is actually pretty practical. For any of these new words to have a chance of catching on, they had to come from a language people in Siam already connected with Westerners. And long before the French showed up in a big way, the main European traders in that whole region were the Portuguese. Their language was the one people knew. And this is where it gets really, really creative. To talk about God, they came up with Phra Maha. It's this perfect mashup. They took the Portuguese word for God, Deus, and they slapped the Thai honorific Phra Maha right on the front, which means the great. So literally, the great Deus, a totally new word was just born out of thin air.
And they didn't stop there. They did the same thing for other ideas. An angel became Maha Angyo, which is basically a Thai-sounding version of the Portuguese word anjo. You can still kind of hear the original word in there if you listen closely.
The cross became Mai Krus, which comes from the Portuguese cruz. And what's so cool is that this linguistic fossil is still around in Bangkok today. The historic Santa Cruz Church? Well, Santa Cruz just means Holy Cross. The name is a direct link back to these early translators.
Okay, so we've got the two main strategies, right? Borrow from high-level Thai and adapt words from Portuguese. Now let's see what this actually looked like in practice and just how much this new language changed over time. It's pretty wild.
So take a look at this passage. It's describing the crucifixion, and it mentions the Yudel, the Jews, lifting the Lord onto the Mai Krus, which is just another version of Mai Kalut, the cross. The style is this really strange mix of very formal Thai and these foreign words that would sound almost like another language to a Thai speaker today.
This is where the evolution really smacks you in the face. Let's look at the Lord's Prayer side by side. The early version from Bishop Lena's time starts very directly, Porteral yu Sawan, Our Father in Heaven. Simple. But now, fast forward about 150 years to the time of King Rama IV. It starts with Kati Praputa Pida, which is more like, O Enlightened Father. The language is so much more elaborate, packed with these Buddhist-style royal terms. It's a huge shift towards a more polished, culturally blended style.
So whatever happened to this really unique language they created? Did it stick around? Well, the story's got one more little twist.
So after King Narai's reign, things got a little messy politically. And the use of this special Christian vocabulary, especially all that borrowing from royal and Buddhist language, was officially discouraged. But the story doesn't end there. Later on, during the reign of King Rama IV, a whole new wave of missionaries came in, and they actually revived and refined those early efforts, which is what led to those more modern, polished translations we just saw.
You see, this was so much more than just swapping out words. People like Bishop Leno and the missionaries of his time, they were like linguistic architects. They were given what seemed like an impossible job, and they responded with just immense creativity, building these incredible bridges between two totally different worlds, one single word at a time.
It's really incredible to think that this entire history of politics and faith and culture is all wrapped up in the evolution of just a few words. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other amazing stories are hiding in plain sight, in the words that we all use every single day?